Hello, fellow beings. I'm on a roll lately with these blue reviews, so while I'm going to go ahead and toss another one at you. So I want to talk about one of these Blu-rays that I received through the kind patronage of new channel patron Drew Dahmer. Drew Dahmer! A buddy out in Washington State, that I've known online for, gosh, at least 10 years, maybe 12. So I was able to purchase a couple of items for the channel through her largesse. Their gift card that she had. They couldn't really afford to donate to my fundraiser. I'm in dire straits financially. My fundraisers are ongoing. You can see them in the description below. Please donate if you can. If you can't, share. Whatever you can do. I've got about 6 weeks to resolve an issue with tax that is looming over my life. And while we're at it, about the description and things below the screen, hit that like button. Please hit that like button. I need the likes. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed. So this was one of the ones I talked about the other night in the unboxing video of the items that I received that my kind patron had made sure I got for the channel. This one's called Straight Time, 1978. This is by Ulu Grosbard, starring, of course, Dustin Hoffman, this cat. It's on the Warner Archives collection. I don't think it ever came out on DVD on the Warner Archives collection. I used to pick up a few odd ones on there with that would be sitting in the Warner vaults. I'd be like, when is XYZ movie coming out? And when they put out Hitman with Bernie Casey, I was excited, very excited. I still have my copy. I'm waiting for them to upgrade that one because that's really a favorite of mine. I've actually reviewed that in print at least twice over the years. Big Hitman fan. Straight Time. So this is one that I encountered in 2000. I just moved back in with my dad. Into his basement, the whole 9 yards. I'm Gen X, it's like a whole stereotype there. And I was able to get well, we used to call him UHF VHF. This is before my dad changed his antenna system and modernized up to DirecTV. He had the old school stuff. I had an old small color TV that a coworker at Barnes & Noble had given me because when my ex-girlfriend left, she took the color TVs with her. And when I was growing up, I only had black and white TVs. And when I moved into my first place, staying with my then best friend, it was his place. I'm pretty sure his only TV was a small black and white TV. I don't think it was color. Could have been, but anyway, I didn't have a regular color experience until this young lady moved in, and then a bit later, a friend had a big one. I remember the first thing I watched on it was the animated Spawn series, and I was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. So fast forward about a year later, I've got this little color TV still, and I have it in my room, close to the bed, and I could see it kind of about this close. And late at night, on one of the VHF channels, syndicated channels, we didn't have cable. My dad never had cable. I just happened to see this movie called Straight Time, and I noticed the director was Ulu Grosbard, who I'd never heard of. It had Dustin Hoffman. It had a few other actors I was familiar with that popped up as I kept watching. I was pretty spellbound by this movie. It's one of those kind of 70s gritty kind of character study, slice of life, somebody trying to catch a break kind of films that I have a lot of love for. I've reviewed. It's a slightly later movie, but along those lines, I've reviewed like Cutter's Way. In some ways, I feel like Thief is like this movie, even though Thief is a guy who decides to remain a thief after he's out of prison and do big heists. That's Michael Mann. What do you expect? It still boils down to the fact he was arrested at a young age. He was in the system, as they say. He couldn't adopt a kid. He couldn't really work too many straight jobs, so he still did heists while he's trying to woo Tuesday Weld. And it's a very touching film in parts, his struggle. But a few years before that, the new Hollywood had kind of made these films, this kind of more personal, humanistic films, uh, individualistic direction styles de rigueur at the very end of the 60s, all the way through the 70s, until the blockbuster with Star Wars and Jaws, etc., arrived and kind of altered the landscape forevermore, for better, worse, or otherwise. So, you're not going to see a movie like, say, Scarecrow with Al Pacino and Gene Hackman anymore. Um, but anyway, Hoffman was one of what I call the big three American actors of that era, who kind of redefined screen acting in their ways. Obviously, they were method. Um, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Dustin Hoffman. And this was coming off a period where I'd been studiously trying to see all of the De Niro Pacino films I could, to kind of study them and catch up and get more about what they were about, why they were so famous, why they were so respected. And also some of these movies I'd seen on television cut as a kid during the 70s. My parents had seen them in the theaters when they could afford it. But I had to settle for the cut black and white versions. So I was seeing them kind of in a new light, and also catching up with ones that were essential. I had lists of movies I needed to make, that I made. I didn't need to make them, but I made them. That's just the way I am. About holes I need to fill in everyone's filmographies. I did a whole video one time called Imaginary Film Class. If you track that down on my channel, that will give you kind of part of my methodology of how I went about such things, and how I actually persuade other people who are just getting into collecting or learning about movies, and are autodidacts like myself, how to do it. So, uh, Straight Time Rush, like I said, was coming off that era where there were still working class characters, like Norma Ray with Sally Field was a big movie. And an aside, Norma Ray was based on a real life person named Crystal Lee Sutton, who was indeed a Union striker in Roanoke Rapids, and she actually went to high school with my mother. So after Norma Ray had gotten big, right after that, my mother had her 20-year high school reunion, coincidentally. And so I got to meet Crystal Lee Sutton and her daughter, and my mom and her stayed in touch for a few years. I think Crystal may be passed, I'm not sure. But that era, yeah, and the era of kind of the whistleblower kind of movies, and then you had movies like later that came spawned of those, like Silkwood and China Syndrome was of that era. So anyway, what I'm getting at is this was of a time that's long gone, and it was refreshing to see it then, and it's refreshing to see it now. It never came out, like I said, I don't think it ever came out on DVD with Warner Archive. So I was always wanting to have a copy. Never had a chance. I remember when it came out on Blu-ray, but I put it on my long list of one of these days I'll be able to afford these. I might have been, delusional with the way things are going in my life now. But, in any case, I've got it. So thank you, Drew Dahmer, and thank you, people who watch this channel who support it. So let me dive into this. It's based on Edward Bunker's novel, No Beast So Fierce, which is basically his experiences in prison, getting out of prison, trying to lead a straight life, and the ever-present possibility of recidivism, i.e., relapsing, going back into the system, falling back into the system, because you can't make it in the outside world. I'm fascinated by prison movies. I love women in prison movies. Everybody loves those, but probably for different reasons. But Short Eyes is a favorite of mine. I deeply love that film. The penitentiary films by my late friend Jamal Fanaka are fantastic. Um, but this is kind of in there. There's not a lot of time spent in prison here, but what is pretty gritty. You know, it's not somewhere you want to go, not somewhere you want to go back to if you've gotten out of there. And that's kind of what this is about. The character who doesn't want to go back. He's not the kind of character that's kind of an archetypal, popular type in fiction where I won't go back no matter what, and they'll have to take me alive. They'll have to kill me first, which is that's an understandable sentiment, and certainly a dramatic engine for a story. This guy, he's kind of complex. His stance on this whole thing, what he wants to do, because he, like the real Edward Bunker, was in the system from a very young age. Kind of like Charles Manson, was arrested at 13, and that famously fed into his, shall we say, worldview. Because prison was his life. Survival was his life. And he was a little guy. So this one we got Dustin Hoffman believably playing. I don't know if Edward Bunker's short. I don't think so. But Dustin Hoffman on the audio commentary for this mentions quite a few times that he was a short guy. He was kind of picked on in school. He was kind of an oddball. And so he was concerned when he got, optioned this novel to do a movie. He's talking to Edward Bunker, and he's like, well, nobody's going to believe me necessarily, like defending myself and beating the hell out of somebody. And Edward Bunker's like, no, it's not all about fisticuffs. You got to make a shiv out of a spoon and, kill somebody when they try to hit you in your bunk at night. And so Dustin said it was really a mental thing, that he could be feared and able to handle himself, regardless of his size or strength. And again, Manson is obviously someone who comes to mind along those lines. Let me do something for my cat real quick, and I'll be right back. I am back. I'm sure you missed me for that split second. So it was interesting. Hoffman was originally going to direct this. He had just been through a divorce from his first wife, and by his account on the audio commentary, which is really nice, by the way, he needed to kind of clear his head, get on with other projects, and he was from LA, but he had spent most of his life in New York doing the acting gigs, and so he went back to LA. He optioned this book, and he was intent on it being his own directorial debut. And things just didn't work out that way. Eventually, it fell into the hands of Ulu, and it was Ulu's first directorial effort also. These two guys had been good friends. They'd worked together on stage things. So I think Hoffman had some say in slotting Ulu in there when he himself couldn't get it. Hoffman's slightly vague about what the ultimate decision as to why he didn't direct it himself. I speculate, and maybe he'll confirm this toward the end of the commentary I've got playing, that it was a studio thing. Like, well, I don't know, Dustin. Let's get this stage guy, director, stagehand, second unit director guy to come in and do this. But by this time, Dustin had cast most of the film and had filled most of the crew roles. The great Owen Roisman is the cinematographer. And it's just some beautiful photography, especially the LA city at night. But he had gotten the cast together, great cast. We'll get to those them in a second. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely when I saw it on TV, and I felt the same way the second time I saw it, which I can't remember when the second time I saw it. Maybe I saw it on Netflix or a streaming service, but it was years ago. I mean, it was probably when I was married. I did get to see it a second time. This is my well, with the commentary, it's my fourth, but yes, this afternoon was my third time ever seeing this. First time on Blu-ray. First time really big TV and color and bells and whistles and shit. And it's a masterpiece. It hits hard, and it's my favorite Dustin Hoffman role. And for some of the reasons that I mentioned, because he mentions that he likes roles where he can tap into something of himself to bring to the role, even if the person has a very different background. And he said one of the things he did tap into was the very thing he had spoken with Edward Bunker about, which was this attitude, that he's a small guy, but he can take care of himself. He's been in the system since he was a teenager, and he's rarely been out of the system. When this movie starts, he's been out. He's been in for 6 years this time, and from 1972 to 1978, and he's as humble as he can possibly muster. His character, whose name is Max Dembo, and Max is trying to get a job. He's basically like, I want to catch a break. Again, is this horrible parole officer played by Emmett Walsh, who's pretty damn good at playing sleazy, unlikable pieces of shit. Good actor. I hope he's acting. I hope he really isn't like that. Sometimes that is the case with people. But this guy hassles the hell out of him, and Dustin goes to hang out with an old friend, Willie, played by young Gary Busey. Willie's got a family. He's got a son, wonderful named Henry, who actually is played by Busey's own real son, Jake Busey, who is an actor now himself. And the wife, I did not recognize. I wasn't paying attention to where I knew she was in the movie, but I wasn't paying attention to where she was in the movie. And so I kept trying to place who was Willie's wife, Selma. And she's got a very short, butch kind of haircut. I'm not like buzzed, but just a tomboy. And she's got very 70s garb, and she's very curvaceous. I noticed that. Sorry, but very what's the word? Not classically beautiful, unconventionally, more like a real person. And it turned out to be Kathy Bates. So I assumed Kathy Bates had always been kind of a bigger woman. So no, apparently not. She was a petite woman, but she was pretty voluptuous. So she does a great job. And one of the things her character imparts to Max is, basically don't hang out with Willie, because Willie's on parole. You're on parole, and Willie's like just getting his head straight after being out for a couple of years. Willie's off the drugs, she thinks, and he's doing good at his job. He doesn't need any influencers, she says to Dustin, and she feels really bad about it. But Max is like, all right, it's cool. And Max takes a lot in the first part of the movie. You see he's trying to be chill, and he does get a job through this, I guess, a temp agency, and there he meets this young lady named Jenny Mercer, played by a young Teresa Russell, whose character is very pretty, as Teresa Russell is, and is kind of playing kind of a dressed down, very plain wallflower, more innocent young girl, nature girl kind of character. And Grosbard had noted that a lot of these, from his research anyway, a lot of criminals had girlfriends like this. I guess that he thought they were kind of these sweet, innocent, Midwestern middle class girls who I guess were excited by, the danger of these guys. And once again, you could use the Manson family as a perfect example of that phenomenon. They kind of hit it off. She's very quiet and very soft-spoken. With Teresa Russell, she's got a certain naturalism when she's, in the way she delivers her lines. and sometimes it's a little off, you know, and it's almost like, does that quite sound real or right? Actually, it kind of does. It's just, it is kind of naturalistic, but you're not used to hearing, you know, beautiful actresses uh, pronouncing things in that way or slurring their words. And it's kind of like, I think a lot of people have written her off as a poor actress, but I think it's really her way of being naturalistic, just like that's how she plays it. You know, that's the vibe she's on. And I've seen her in a ton of movies over the years, and I, you know, I think she's a favorite of mine for some of these very reasons. But so they kind of hit it off, but Dustin needs to get a job, so he gets a job at a Coca-Cola can not a bottling plant, but a can company, and you know, just grunt work, and it's an honest deal, and he's making minimum wage. So unfortunately, his asshole parole officer is dogging his heels, and also unfortunately, Willie visited him briefly, and Willie lit up some crack or heroin or something while he was there. And you know, Max is like, hey man, that could put me 3 more years. Don't do that shit. And Willie's like, it's okay, man. Willie's not that bright. I just want to throw that out there. You'll figure that out later. So parole officer makes a surprise visit, shakes him down, finds the matches, starts putting things together, and he accuses Dustin of, you know, being into hard drugs. He kind of shakes him down and, you know, gropes his forearms and his biceps and everything. It's very almost like he's kind of getting excited about this. And there's no marks, there's no tracks, and Dustin's character is never even portrayed as having been a junkie in the past. You know, he was a burglar. So Emmett Walsh handcuffs him to the bed. It's very humiliating, and his little neighbor's little daughter sees him. And so they take him in. Walsh takes him in, and it's humiliating. He has to stay in jail for a whole week. His parole officer fucks off and does a bunch of other shit, and you know, he finally comes to see him, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get you out today. You tested clean, your urine tested clean, and Max is like, you forgot about me. He's like, no, I got busy, I got waylaid. And Max is like, yeah, there are phones. And he's like, you watch it now. Don't be sarcastic with me. Classic, you know, authoritarian, you know, the kind of person that you just want to say, fuck you. And unfortunately, it's one of the situations where your fate lies in their hands, like a parent or a landlord, you know, or a boss. The parole officer slots right in there pretty well. And, you know, it's like, it's me or the street, buddy. And so they go for a ride, and this self-aggrandizing buffoon parole officer just talks incessantly about mundane shit in his own life. And finally, you know, Max has had enough, and he grabs the hold of the wheel, and they ride, and the car goes over, you know, not over an embankment, but near an embankment. They go off the road onto some dirt gravel, and he's just, you know, riding the thing everywhere with one hand. With the other hand, he's beating the living fuck out of Emmett Walsh. That was a satisfying moment, I gotta say. Every time I see this movie, I'm like, this is great. Because you don't think he's ever going to get the opportunity. Because in so many of these movies, that never happens, that comeuppance. And in real life, it, you know, really doesn't happen. Unless you get killed. Well, you might get killed doing it or go back to prison. And finally, he strands Walsh and takes his car, and he handcuffs him to this chain fence in the middle of a freeway, and he pulls his pants all the way down. And so You know, warning, this movie does have a frightening shot. It's not a gory movie, but you do get to see him at Walsh's exposed buttocks and legs, you know, for several seconds. It might be a little traumatic for some guys and gals deep out there. So I just want to warn you, okay? I wish someone had warned me, but it was an apt punishment. And actually, the pulling the pants down part was it was inspired by Hoffman. It really happened to him when he was a teenager. The bully picked on the short kid right when he gets the nerve to ask out a girl, and not only does he pick on him, but he pulls his pants all the way down. So yeah, man, what you see at this point is Dustin tapping into that anger, that rage. In real life, the rage of being small and being picked on and feeling helpless. Within the storyline, it's of being in prison and having to, like I said, take care of yourself, learn how to survive. So once again, we get the idea of the Charles. I'm not comparing this character directly to Charles Manson in any way. I'm not making any statement one way or another on Charles Manson. I'm just saying Charles Manson is a figure I've studied quite a lot over the years, and he is very archetypal of this kind of character. He was 5'2". It's the same height as me, and same height as Ronnie James Dio and Prince, and they became musicians. So if only Manson had become a musician, it's like that. What if Hitler had been an artist? Hitler wasn't that great an artist, but Manson was, to me, a very good musician, songwriter. But he couldn't fight. You know, he couldn't get out of the system, and the system definitely couldn't get out of his head. And so he had kind of this burning hatred, probably for all humanity. So you really see some of this anger, you know, in this character. I want to mention as a tangent, real quick. It reminds me of a scene in the movie The Mac. With Max Julien, one of the classic blaxploitation films, and Richard Pryor co-stars, and it's one of Richard Pryor's, it might be his first real dramatic role, because it's quite a while before Blue Collar. But there's a scene where the cops start shaking down Goldie, the pimp, the main character played by Max Julien, and his buddy Richard Pryor is with him. And I was watching this movie with the audio commentary on, and I was always struck by how, you know, Goldie, like, you know, he's smooth. He's like, yeah, whatever, man. Fuck you, pig. You know, and he keeps his cool with these two buffoonish cops who are just basically just love to hassle him. And they're pretty grotesque and ugly in their behavior and their verbiage. And Pryor's character just starts to lose it. And he's just like, what the fuck, Goldie, man, you motherfucker, picking on me, goddamn. And he keeps saying it all the way when they're walking off. And on the audio commentary, Max Julien points out, he's like, that was kind of a method deal. Richard was getting shaken down by these cops in character, and he had a flashback from his years of being abused. Again, being a little guy, helpless, because, you know, Pryor was abused as a kid. He was sexually abused as a kid. And he said that performance was so intense and went on so long because it was real, and he couldn't get out of that mode. So as someone who is small and has been picked on quite a lot physically and otherwise, not sexually, thankfully, but in every other way in my life, I get these kind of characters. I don't want to say, you know, they're like role models or heroes for me, but I can't say I can't say it. I can't lie and say it isn't cathartic sometimes to watch these kind of things. So the thing with Dustin, though, is, you know, Max, you seem him as such a nice guy. He starts dating Jenny after that. He actually shakes his parole, so he's basically a fugitive, and he kind of tells her, "Hey, you know, I'm not going to go back to the parole. I'm a fugitive." And she's like, you know, Teresa Russell in that kind of roomy-eyed kind of, you know, no, that's all right, you know. And it's like, oh, okay, and is she for real? I'm like, yeah, she's for real. She's like, yeah, man, you know, it's fine. she just goes along with it, and she really digs him. A lot of movies would be like her having some giant, crisis, of conscience over this, or tempted to turn him in, or the other extreme, like Mallory Knox, like, yeah, take me along with you, Bonnie and Clyde, we're gonna kill everybody. But she plays it right there the way Grosbard described it. A girl who grew up in a totally different life, and she finds herself fascinated by this guy. She likes the good side of him that's trying to stay, fairly in a non-violent scenario, but is going to have to start planning heists again to make it, because he in his mind, I guess, failed in the outside world yet again. And then there's a side of him that maybe has a little bit of that danger, which she just sees, flashes of. He can be really sweet, and then he can be very aggressive. When I say aggressive, he's not abusive, but he's terse. He's to the point, like, come on, we've got to get out of here. And he's used to making these kind of alpha male decisions on the rare occasions he's ever had a woman. And part of it is motivated by not wanting her to get hurt, because where does she fit into all this? She isn't like Mallory Knox or Bonnie, what's their last name? Clyde Bear and Bonnie Parker. So, again, there's more parallels with the great film Thief, with James Caan and Tuesday Weld. Great strains in here of drama. And here we get into how great this cast is across the board, because he goes to this cat who he knows, and he's done some jobs with. He's known him for years, and is played by the great Harry Dean Stanton, Twin Peaks Harry Dean Stanton, the late great Harry Dean Stanton. Now, Harry Dean Stanton was a lot older than I thought he was when he died. I thought he was like 80 at the absolute oldest. Turns out when Twin Peaks The Return came out in 2017, he was like 91. And then he died like a year later. The Twin Peaks repertoire has just been falling like flies for years now. David Lynch barely got some of these people on camera. In the case of Catherine Coulson, the log lady, he literally got her on camera barely in time, and she was terminally ill, and they knew she was terminally ill, and so her character was portrayed as terminally ill. So Harry Dean Stanton, so you got to think about that, 1978. Fuck, that's like 40 years. So he was already like a little over 50 when he made this, and this is a year before he did Alien, and got a bit more visibility. And of course, then headed into the 80s with Repo Man, Paris, Texas, and a lot of well-deserved plaudits. He's a brilliant actor, also a great musician. Rest in peace, Harry, man. And he's fantastic in this. He's a very likable dude. He kind of knows the streets. He knows these situations. And, he's really cool with Max. But you soon learn that he's been almost burnt by Max during other jobs in the past, because Max has this anal retentive, I don't know if that's the right word, OCD, obsessive compulsive approach to certain things. Like, he doesn't know how to stop. It's never quite right. And we first see this early in the movie where he's taking the typing test at the temp agency with Teresa Russell. And she's like, time. And he's like, hold on. I just got to get that last sentence. Well, this translates into his approach at robberies too. Might be the reason why he got caught and went to prison. He doesn't want to stop until he's satisfied, until he's got every little piece, every little dollar, every little bit of jewelry. So Harry's character here, I'm trying to remember his name, he knows this about Max going in, and then you see the other thing is that there's a setup earlier in a club where there's a young Hispanic guy, younger brother of an old buddy of Max's, who he wants to be their driver. And they've gotten to where they're going to do this heist on this jewelry store. And he and Jenny have kind of scoped it out together. And there's a particular watch he really wanted to buy her. And so there's still kind of that feeling that he'd like this for his girlfriend, but this is a life he doesn't have, you know, and the only way he knows how to get it is to fucking take it. And this is kind of the climactic set piece of the film. This is really where things get intense. I mean, there's a brief bank robbery scene these two guys pull off, and then at the end of that, Dustin doesn't want to leave, and Harry keeps chiding him. You know, he's like, you just got to watch it. When I call time, you got to go. We got to go. And well, the young Hispanic kid who was going to be the getaway driver, it falls through off camera. And guess who Max picks? Willie, Gary Busey, who's probably drugged out of his mind. And it doesn't really matter if he is or not, because he doesn't have a very large mind anyway, as I alluded to earlier. Kind of a goofball. He's going to be the driver, and they're like, stay here. And the whole way there, Harry Dean's like, hey, you didn't tell me this. You didn't tell me the change of plans. You didn't tell me about the driver. Come on, man, you can't be doing this shit. And then as they're walking up, you know, they're kind of doing their thing they do, where they're kind of psych themselves up for the event. And he's like, how you feeling? How you feeling? Good vibes. How you feeling? And Harry Dean's like, good. Except for that driver switch. I shouldn't have done that, man. And also like Harry Dean Stanton's hair. I'm in the general ballpark of age as Harry was when he made this movie, and I wish I had all the big mop of hair he's got. He's like like the Beatles here. So they do it, and they take hammers. Harry Dean's got the shotgun. Dustin's got a handgun, and his main thing is he puts on these goggles and these gloves, and he puts them on like right in front of the people. They don't even notice him at first. They just kind of walk in. He's got a bag, sets it down, and the lady who works there is like, "What are you doing, sir?" And he's like, "Stand back," and takes these hammers, and he just starts smashing the cases, and it's just staccato, like almost like he's playing drums. And it's one shot, it's one take, one shot. I don't mean there was just one take, but what I mean is from the time he walks up and sets his materials down, her talking to him, to when he starts hitting the shit all the way down the row of glass encasing all of the jewelry. It's just one shot. That takes a lot of coordination. Dustin's great, and obviously he's done this kind of thing before. But again, he's obsessed. He doesn't know when to stop. And then they kept closing up on him in his goggles, and he's scraping through the glass with these gloves on. And he's like, I thought there was another one here. And so his like OCD overcompensatory thing he has, it kicks in at the very wrong fucking time in life, man. And Harry Dean's like, it's time, we gotta go. And Harry Dean himself has knocked out a few windows and grabbed a few pieces with one hand while he's got the shotgun with the other. And they finally hustle, only to find that Willie's not there. There's no car in that place. And once again, Max's buddy's like, what the hell? This is the last time we're doing this together, which he'd already said it inside of the place. You're never on time. We're never doing this again. They go outside, and he's like, this is it. It's over, man. Where'd he go? Where the fuck? Why didn't you get the other driver? And they finally have no choice but to run, each with their bags and their, weapons. And the cops pop up around an alleyway. And Harry Dean, he shoots at the cop in the car, not like to kill him, but to ward him off. And Dustin's already jumped over this fence, and he's got his bag and he's got his piece. And Harry Dean is shot, falls backward, and he looks flabbergasted. Well, wouldn't you be? Like, I'm about to die. Dustin shoots a few times into the fence. And here you go. I mean, Dustin is really at that. He's at that point where a lot of these kind of characters and maybe people in real life get with this is that now there's no turning back. I can't get caught. I've got to keep going all the way down the line. I got to stay focused like a laser. And sadly, he has to let his friend die. I think he takes his bag of jewels, maybe not. But he's got his own, and leaves the shotgun, of course. And he's like fucked up. He's just lost in this neighborhood off Wilshire Boulevard. And he eventually makes his way to Jenny. He goes to her work where he met her. He's like, we gotta go. Where are you gonna go? She's like, what? He's like, come on, we gotta go. It's like, what the hell? And they go, and he's not telling her what happened. She knows it's something dangerous. She knows it's a job. They already had the talk about, I don't really necessarily want to know what you're doing, Max, but okay. I'm with you. I'm building something with you. Like I said, their chemistry is similar to James Caan and Tuesday Weld in Thief. Though I think Caan and Weld, theirs is more intense, more romantic. This is kind of like two people, they're groping towards a romance, trying to find the right words. Like, is this happening with us? Like, they really say things like that. I can relate, man. So they split, and they just keep fucking driving. And while he's driving, they're listening to the radio, and of course, popular plot device, but does the trick. The report is on what happened, and it's kind of like in Heat, where in Heat, I mean the movie Heat, Perverts by Michael Mann, where De Niro has done that great job at the end with his buddies, and his buddies are all either dead or captured, and he's got all the loot, and he goes back to find his, again, sweet, innocent kind of girlfriend, played by Amy Brenneman, the Southern artist, and and then he's like, that stuff on the news, that was you. He's like, yeah, we got to get out of here, and he's still like the same way. Got to stay focused. We'll talk about it later, And it's sad to see these women pulled along for the ride with this. I mean, sad for them, and sad for the men who are like trying to be strong and get through and keep running, and they don't want to let go of the woman, and they don't want to hurt the woman or force her to go either. It's like a big conundrum. What the fuck do you do? Because everything's moving so fast, All of that's relayed here really exceptionally well. And finally, they get to this like kind of truck stop, and they're just going to keep driving, and they get some gas. And while they're in the diner, she goes to the bathroom, and he's inquiring about the buses. And he's like, yeah, there's some Palmerdale bus or whatever. It's going to come right by here and go all the way out to L.A. And when she comes back, he's like, yeah, there's this bus, and him and the waitress are talking about it. And she's like, you want to get rid of me. You want me to leave. You're going to leave me. You want me to go home. And he's like, again, he can't get the words together to really articulate all these emotions going in his head. And he wants to do what's best for her. And he feels like it's over for him, recidivism, here I come. And he says, okay, I gotta go. And he's getting in the car, and then she runs up to the car, and she's like, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna leave? He's like, I gotta go. She's like, will you call me? And he's like, I gotta go. It's like, he speeds off, and you can tell he's sad. He doesn't like burst into tears or anything, but he's learned probably how to control these emotions that he really wants to express, because you do see flashes of that guy throughout the movie, but you also see in a dime the side of him that's got to protect himself. And I want to say this, another similarity with Heat, an important thing I forgot. Before they get to this place and get the gas, they have to make that one more stop. And, in Heat, De Niro doesn't need to do it, but he goes to this hotel. He keeps Amy Brenneman in the car with the car warmed up. He goes to see this fucker named, which one does he hit? Wayne Grove. This guy fucked their whole everything up in the movie. And he blows the shit out of him because he's like, you got my friends killed. And might have been a little inspired by this scene. I kind of knew this was coming. I didn't remember from watching it before. But when he said I had to make a stop, I'm like, I bet he's going to try to find Willie. And they go up to Willie's house. And it's an intense fucking scene, man. And he's like, I went to jail for you before. We revealed that. Well, okay, before meaning earlier in the movie because he was doing drugs in the room. And he's like, my friend died. He'd have done anything for me. And this is really where we get more emotion from Dustin. It's really more emotion than you get from him and Jenny. He's like, you don't understand what I'm talking about. You don't get it. You're fucked up Jerry. Jerry's the name of the character, Harry Dean Stanton. He's like, Jerry's dead. He's in the street because of you. And he's like, it's all right. It's all right. Give me a bear hug. And he shoots him. That's that. And I saw that one coming, but not for memory. I just kind of felt like this is what he's got to do. His karmic thing he's got to take care of. His loose end he has to tie up is this guy can't just get away with betraying him. Even though he was his friend, he went against their code. He broke it, and his buddy is dead, and now he's fucked. So yeah, gotta kill him. So anyway, he drives off into the desert. And last thing I think he says to Teresa Russell, she said, what are you gonna do? I mean, why? He's like, I want to get caught. And that's kind of it, man, And the film ends with these are kind of doctored pictures of Dustin Hoffman through the years, but the first one's of him being booked in 1972, and he resembles, Max here. The other one's of him in 1966 when he gets busted, and it's a 60s picture of Dustin Hoffman, but with the prison shit in front of him. And then there's one from 1954, and it's a young Dustin Hoffman. And so you see how long he's been in the system, and the camera just closes in and in and in on his eyes. Like, what if the young Max had not gotten introduced to the system and stuck in it and destined to always, for recidivism? This is a motherfucking classic. I'm just going to tell it like it is. Now, the extras on this Blu-ray, the audio commentary is cool. There's a nice trailer. But, it also says on the back, Vintage Featurette, Straight Time, the something, something, something. My eyes aren't what they used to be. And you know what? That Vintage Featurette is nowhere on here, unless it's an Easter egg. If y'all know which button to press for me to find it, let me know. Is there a little Book of Ebon symbol like on the Beyond's Easter eggs that I'm supposed to click on? That's it, man. That's Straight Time. I gave the whole movie away. My friend Tim McLean, he kind of reminded me inadvertently that, my videos probably weren't best for people who had not seen the movie before. And I do have friends, including he himself, who will just watch the first few minutes of one that they haven't watched before and then wait until they've seen the movie to watch my whole video. Because I get all deep into it, I'm like re-experiencing the movie with you guys. And it's fun. I hope you guys get something out of it. So he kind of inadvertently reminded me that I hadn't been putting the spoiler warnings on my descriptions below in about a dozen videos. So I'm going back and doing that. So there will be one on here. So it's basically like warning, spoilers abound, spoilers galore, and also something semi-sarcastic, like, may contain controversial opinions. But I feel like sometimes I have to do that, even out of sarcasm, because of, when I express some of these ideas on Facebook, it's like there's always like 30 people waiting to defriend me, and then 5 waiting to, tell me to go off myself. I mean, it's more about politics, but you'd be surprised. One time I announced, I was just like, yeah, I'm just really not a Star Wars fan, and 20 minutes, 30 friends gone. And then the next day, I said something unfavorable about Hillary Clinton. Half hour, 40 friends gone. I'm like, wow. So it's bad enough where, we're partisan to the point of the Democrats and the Republicans, and people are worshiping the likes of Hillary Clinton. But damn, they're partisan about Star Wars to this extreme. I mean, give me a break, guys. So anyway, maybe my Mandalorian positive review redeemed me in some people's eyes. So anyway, that's it. I don't know what's coming up next, but I hope you guys are having a good night, a good life, and help me out if you can with my plight. Please drop a like, please subscribe, and I'll be back soon. This has been fun. This is one of my favorites. I highly recommend it. Rock on.